This isn't just a story, it's a real-life moment that could save your life one day. What one cleaning lady noticed in a billionaire's body language changed everything, and by the end of this video, you'll understand why every second mattered. Subscribe now, because once you hear what she did, you'll never look at everyday heroes the same way again, and you might just learn something that could make you a hero too. Richard Brooks, billionaire CEO of Brooks Pharmaceutical, was in the middle of a heated phone call when a calm but firm voice interrupted him. "Mr. Brooks, your blood pressure is dangerously high, and you're showing alarming neurological symptoms. You need to get to the hospital now." It wasn't his doctor speaking. It wasn't even a board member. It was Kesha Washington, the 42-year-old black cleaning lady who quietly moved between the offices every night. For a moment, the room froze. The billionaire's voice, sharp and commanding only seconds ago, faltered. His eyes narrowed, as if trying to understand if he'd heard correctly. "Excuse me?" Kesha stood her ground, still holding her cleaning supplies. She had just watched him stagger, his hands tremble, his speech stumble over words. These were symptoms she recognized instantly from her years as a registered nurse before her life took a devastating turn. But to Richard, she was just a cleaner, invisible, disposable, unqualified to speak to him about anything beyond polishing his desk. "Are you giving me medical advice?" His tone dripped with sarcasm. "What's your background again? Advanced cleaning?" The boardroom erupted in polite laughter, the kind meant to keep powerful men comfortable. What Richard didn't know was that this cleaning lady had once been responsible for saving lives every single day. And now, she had just seen enough warning signs to know something was dangerously wrong. But instead of listening, he dismissed her, turning back to his million-dollar phone call. That's when Kesha decided, if he wouldn't listen now, she'd find another way to make sure he did. If you think people should never underestimate others because of their job or skin color, like this video and comment respect right now. Kesha Washington had mastered the art of being invisible. In a world where rich men measured worth in dollar signs, her faded cleaning uniform acted like camouflage, letting her pass unnoticed through boardrooms and corridors. But years before she pushed a mop, she wore a white coat, steady hands saving patients in the emergency ward of St. Mary's Hospital. That life had ended abruptly the night her younger brother was accused of a crime he didn't commit. Fighting for his freedom drained her savings, her energy, and ultimately her career. No one at Brooks Pharmaceutical knew this. To them, she was just another hourly worker, the kind who was expected to smile quietly and disappear when the important people walked in. But on that day, in that moment, she couldn't stay silent. Richard's left hand had twitched uncontrollably. His pupils looked uneven. Twice during the meeting, his speech had slurred into an incoherent string of words before he caught himself. She had seen these signs before, minutes before a stroke claimed one of her patients. Her instincts screamed that Richard Brooks was in danger. Yet, when she spoke up, his response was to humiliate her in front of the most powerful people in the company. That sting of public embarrassment might have silenced someone else. But Kesha had lost too much in life to let pride or fear hold her back. That night, as she wheeled her cleaning cart into the quiet, empty boardroom, she began to form a plan. She would not confront him again, not directly. But she would find someone who had the power to make him listen. And if that meant risking her job, so be it. If you believe courage means speaking up even when no one wants to hear it, hit that like button and comment courage below. The next morning, the Brooks Pharmaceutical headquarters buzzed with its usual rhythm, suits rushing through glass doors, assistants juggling calls, the scent of fresh espresso drifting through the air. Kesha moved quietly along the marble floors, her mop bucket squeaking faintly, blending into the background like she always did. But her eyes were locked on Richard Brooks. She noticed the way he rubbed his temple every few minutes, the subtle wobble in his step as he walked toward the elevator, the way his breath seemed heavier than usual after only a short flight of stairs. No one else saw it. Or maybe they saw it and chose to ignore it. Powerful men had a way of making their vulnerabilities invisible, not because they didn't exist, but because the people around them were too afraid to acknowledge them. Kesha knew this was dangerous. She also knew Richard's schedule was tightly guarded, so getting close to him again would be nearly impossible. That's when she noticed his personal driver, an older man named Howard, waiting by the curb with the sleek black Bentley. Howard had always been polite to her, offering a nod when their paths crossed. She decided he might be her way in. Later that day, while wiping down the lobby's gold-trimmed doors, Kesha approached him casually, masking her urgency behind small talk. "Howard," she said quietly, "has Mr. Brooks been feeling all right lately?" His brow furrowed, but before he could answer, Richard appeared, phone pressed to his ear, barking orders as he slid into the backseat. The Bentley pulled away, leaving Kesha standing on the curb, her heart pounding. Time was running out. If she couldn't reach him soon, the next sign she saw might be the last. If you've ever noticed something no one else would believe, like this video and comment "I'd act right now." That evening, the office threw a lavish celebration in the rooftop lounge for the launch of Brooks Pharmaceuticals' latest breakthrough drug. The city skyline glittered in the background as waiters glided between guests carrying champagne flutes. Richard Brooks stood at the center of it all, delivering a charismatic speech that drew polite laughter and applause from the crowd. But Kesha, who had been sent upstairs to tidy the staff service area, wasn't listening to his words. She was watching him. Under the warm glow of the chandeliers, his skin had taken on a pale, almost gray hue. His left arm hung just slightly lower than the right, and his jaw seemed tight, as though he were forcing it to cooperate. She knew these were not random quirks. They were red flags, urgent, life-threatening ones. Then it happened. As he raised his glass for a toast, his words suddenly blurred, twisting into sounds that didn't make sense. A ripple of confusion passed over the room, but it was smoothed over instantly by polite laughter, the way people sometimes laugh when they don't know how else to react. Only Kesha froze, her stomach twisting. She stepped forward, instinct pushing her toward him, but a security guard blocked her path, mistaking her urgency for impropriety. "Staff stays in the service area," he said firmly. She bit back her frustration, retreating into the shadows as the moment passed and Richard seemed to recover, smiling for the cameras as though nothing had happened. The guests went back to clinking glasses, the incident already forgotten. But Kesha knew better. A clock had started ticking, and if she didn't stop it, it would end in disaster. If you think ignoring a warning can be deadly, hit like right now and comment "never ignore" so more people see this. The next day, rain poured over the city, streaking the tall glass windows of Brooks Pharmaceutical. Kesha arrived early, her uniform still damp from the short walk from the bus stop. She wasn't here just to clean, she was here to act. She had spent the night thinking about who could possibly convince Richard Brooks to take his health seriously. His family? Untouchable behind layers of privacy. His board members? More interested in profit than people. But there was one person she kept coming back to, Howard, his driver. Howard had been with Richard for over 2 decades. He'd driven him through corporate battles, personal scandals, and high-stakes deals. If anyone could speak to him without being dismissed, it was Howard. Timing her moment carefully, Kesha found him in the underground garage, leaning against the Bentley, reading the sports section. "Howard," she began, her voice low, "I need to talk to you about something serious. It's about Mr. Brooks." His eyes lifted, a flicker of curiosity behind them. She explained what she'd seen, the tremors, the slurred speech, the uneven pupils. She told him about her past as a nurse, the patients she'd lost when they ignored the same warning signs. Howard listened without interrupting, his brow furrowed deeper with each word. Finally, he said quietly, "You might be right. He's been off lately. But you know how stubborn he is." Kesha nodded. "That's why you have to help me. He won't listen to me, but he trusts you." Howard hesitated, clearly weighing the risk. If Richard found out they were discussing his health behind his back, it could cost them both their jobs. But finally, he folded the paper, looked her in the eye, and said, "All right. I'll try." If you believe that sometimes it takes courage to step in, hit like and comment "step in" so more people hear this story. Howard didn't waste time. That afternoon, while the rain still drummed softly on the garage roof, he suggested to Richard that they take a longer route home to avoid traffic. It was a small lie, but it bought them privacy. No assistants, no security detail, no business partners listening in. Kesha had slipped him a small folded note before they left, a list of symptoms and what they could mean. Howard kept it in his pocket like a secret weapon. As the Bentley glided through the wet streets, Howard eased into the conversation, asking Richard if he'd been feeling stressed lately. Richard chuckled, brushing it off with the same arrogance he carried into every meeting. "Stress is just part of the job," he said. "If I couldn't handle it, I wouldn't be here." But Howard didn't let it go. He mentioned the moments he'd noticed, forgetting directions to a regular destination, pausing mid-sentence, gripping the door handle too tightly when climbing out of the car. Richard waved a dismissive hand, but there was a flicker in his eyes, not fear exactly, but something close to it. "You've been talking to people," Richard said finally, his tone half accusation, half curiosity. Howard met his gaze in the rearview mirror. "Someone who knows what she's talking about is worried about you. I think you should listen." That's when Richard's phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen, about to answer, when his hand trembled so violently he dropped it onto the seat. For a split second, his confident mask cracked. Maybe? I'll think about it, he muttered, looking out the rain-speckled window. Howard didn't press further, he knew the seed had been planted. If you think the right words at the right time can save a life, hit like now and comment right time so others see this. 2 days later, the annual Brooks Foundation Charity Gala filled the city's most prestigious ballroom with glittering gowns, sharp tuxedos, and the hum of polite society. Cameras flashed as billionaires and celebrities walked the crimson carpet, and Richard Brooks stood at the center of it all, the perfect picture of health and power, or so it seemed. Kesha had been brought in as part of the contracted cleaning crew, tasked with keeping the restrooms and service corridors spotless. But from her discreet corner near the catering station, she kept her eyes on him like a hawk. Halfway through the night, Richard stepped onto the stage to make his speech. His voice carried confidence at first, thanking donors, praising the charity's work. But as he shifted to the next part of his speech, his words began to blur again, just like that night in the rooftop lounge. A glass in his hand trembled slightly. The crowd didn't notice, or maybe they didn't want to. People smiled politely, assuming it was just nerves or a slip of the tongue. Then, without warning, Richard swayed, his knees buckling. The microphone stand clattered to the floor. A sharp gasp rippled through the ballroom as security rushed forward. Kesha's instincts screamed at her to move, but she knew she'd never get past the staff barrier. In those seconds, everything slowed. She could see his left arm dangling uselessly at his side, the corner of his mouth drooping, classic signs of a stroke. Every second counts, she muttered under her breath. But the people around him hesitated, unsure, waiting for someone with authority to act. That hesitation could be fatal. If you believe that knowing what to do in an emergency is everything, hit like now and comment every second so more people are prepared. Kesha didn't think, she moved. Dropping the cleaning supplies in her hands, she darted toward the stage, weaving through startled guests and dodging a waiter carrying champagne. A security guard stepped into her path, his hand outstretched. You can't," but she cut him off, her voice sharp and urgent, "He's having a stroke. Let me through or he could die." There was a flicker of doubt in the guard's eyes, but her intensity and the authority in her tone made him hesitate just long enough. She slipped past. The bright stage lights were blinding, and the noise of the crowd swelled into a confused hum. Richard lay on his side now, blinking slowly, his breathing uneven. Kesha dropped to her knees beside him, ignoring the gasps and murmurs from the audience. "Mr. Brooks, it's Kesha from the cleaning staff. You're having a stroke, but I'm here. We're going to get you help." Her hands moved with practiced precision, tilting his head slightly to keep his airway clear, checking his pulse, speaking loudly to keep him conscious. "Stay with me. Tell me your name." She looked up at the nearest security guard. "Call 911 and tell them it's a suspected stroke. Time of onset, right now." The man obeyed without question. Guests began to pull out their phones, recording the scene, whispers spreading like wildfire. Kesha didn't care, the only thing that mattered was keeping him stable until help arrived. Every instinct from her nursing days surged back to life. She could feel the tremor in his body, the weakness on one side. She leaned close, her voice firm but calm, "I'm not letting you go tonight. If you believe heroes don't always wear uniforms, hit like and comment hero so others know ordinary people can do extraordinary things." The room had fallen into a stunned silence, broken only by the distant echo of music from another hall and the sharp commands Kesha barked to anyone who could help. Her voice cut through the tension like a blade. "Get me a pillow or a folded jacket. We need to keep his head supported." A young caterer dashed forward, sliding his blazer into her hands. She gently propped Richard's head, checking his breathing again. "Stay awake, Mr. Brooks. Talk to me. What day is it?" His lips moved, but the words were slurred, almost unrecognizable. She squeezed his hand. "That's fine. You're doing great. Just keep trying." In the distance, the sound of sirens grew louder, a lifeline rushing toward them. The crowd began to part, but phones were still raised, recording every second. Kesha ignored the flashing lights from cameras, her focus was razor-sharp. One security guard whispered into his earpiece, keeping the path clear for the incoming medics. Come on," she muttered under her breath. Every minute mattered, every second without treatment meant more of his brain cells at risk. Finally, the ballroom doors burst open and 2 paramedics in dark uniforms sprinted in, carrying their gear. "Suspected stroke," Kesha announced before they even asked, rattling off the time of onset, symptoms, and what she'd done so far. One of them glanced at her, momentarily surprised at her accuracy and composure. They worked quickly, attaching monitors, starting oxygen, preparing to move him. As they lifted Richard onto the stretcher, his eyes met hers for just a moment, a flicker of recognition, gratitude, and perhaps disbelief. She squeezed his hand once before letting go, watching as they wheeled him out into the night. If you think knowing the right thing to do in a crisis should be taught to everyone, hit like and comment be ready so this message spreads. Whispers in the aftermath. The moment the stretcher disappeared through the doors, the ballroom erupted in a mix of confusion, shock, and curiosity. Guests clustered into small groups, whispering about the dramatic scene they'd just witnessed. Some speculated about Richard's condition, others debated whether the woman who rushed the stage was even staff. She knew exactly what she was doing, one man said quietly, like she'd seen it before. A few people approached Kesha, their expensive perfume mixing with the scent of champagne and polished wood floors. Was he really having a stroke? How did you know? She gave brief answers, keeping her emotions in check. Yes, and I recognized the signs. Her tone was calm but firm. The event's coordinator, clearly rattled, pulled her aside. You just saved the CEO's life, but how did you know exactly what to do? Kesha hesitated, her eyes flickering with something unspoken. I used to be a nurse, she admitted softly. Life had other plans for me. The coordinator blinked in surprise, but before she could ask more, the crowd shifted again as word spread that Richard had been stabilized in the ambulance. The murmurs began to change tone, from shock to admiration. She's the reason he's still alive, someone said, and the words traveled like wildfire. Phones lit up, notifications pinged. Kesha didn't realize it yet, but clips of her decisive actions were already going viral online. If you believe real heroes deserve their stories told, hit like and comment true hero to keep her story alive. The unexpected call the next morning, Kesha sat in her small apartment, sipping coffee and trying to process the whirlwind of the previous night. Her phone buzzed non-stop, messages from co-workers, news outlets wanting interviews, and dozens of social media notifications. One video of her on stage, shouting orders to security, had already passed 1 million views. Then came the call that made her freeze mid-sip. Hello, this is Thomas, Mr. Brooks's personal assistant. He's awake and asking to see you. Kesha blinked, unsure if she'd heard right. You want me to come to the hospital? Yes, right away. He's insistent. She hesitated only for a moment before agreeing. At the hospital, she was led past bustling nurses and down a quiet hall to a private room. Richard Brooks, looking pale but alert, sat propped up in bed. His eyes lit up when he saw her. Kesha, he said, his voice steadier than she expected. I owe you my life. She tried to brush it off, but he shook his head. No. You recognized something my own security team missed. Everyone ignored the signs, except you. Why? She took a breath. Because I've seen it before. I used to be a nurse. And when you've been trained to save lives, you never really stop. His gaze softened. I don't know how I can repay you, but I intend to find a way. If you think heroes deserve opportunities as big as their courage, hit like and comment new beginning to show your support. A new path. A week later, the headlines had shifted from gossip about the gala to admiration for the cleaning lady who saved a billionaire. News anchors replayed the footage, medical experts praised her quick thinking, and social media was flooded with messages calling her an inspiration. But Kesha's life was changing in ways she couldn't have imagined. Richard Brooks invited her to his office, not as an employee to clean floors, but as a guest of honor. I've been thinking, he began. You saved my life. You have medical skills you're not using. I want to offer you a position, head of the new Brooks Foundation Community Health Program. It's a paid role, with full support for you to finish your nursing certifications again if you choose. Kesha's eyes widened. Why me? He smiled. Because you didn't just save me, you saw me. And that's the kind of person I want leading this mission. She accepted, tears welling in her eyes. From that moment, her story wasn't just about one night, it became a movement. People from all over sent her letters, thanking her for inspiring them to learn basic life-saving skills. Standing on the balcony of her new office weeks later, Kesha thought about the strange twist of fate that had led her here. She was no longer just the cleaning lady. She was proof that sometimes, the right person in the right moment can change everything. If you believe anyone can rise above their circumstances, hit like and comment rise to inspire others to never stop believing.